And we are off to the races. How you guys all doing today? For those of you who are just listening in the podcast-o-verse, welcome to the Canadian Commie, where we are commenting on the decline of Western civilization. It is a solidarity movement, a revolutionary movement. Hopefully you find any kind of catharsis from listening in. How this works. I am simultaneously streaming this on a YouTube channel. People comment in the YouTube channel. Or over on twitch.com, and I respond to their commentary. If you would like to join in on that, just go to www.thecanadiancommie.com. It'll take you directly to this. We live stream 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. If you would like to donate to the cause, you can do so at patreon.com/thecanadiancommie. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for being here. I value and appreciate every single one of you, and also big shout out to my Patreons. Thank you so much for supporting me. Thank you so much for being a part of this. Thank you so much for being here. I love each and every one of you as we proceed down the path of experiencing this collapse collectively. I hope you are all doing well out there and finding solidarity with the people who are around you the best that you possibly can. Today was a ridiculous day for me. The heat just really got to me. I went for a walk around my neighborhood, and I was about to say goodbye to this cast. I was not going to do today's cast because I got home and I was just like sucking oxygen, just like, I couldn't believe how exhausted I was. So, climate change, another part of the decline of the Western civilization. Kevin, good to see you, my man. Kevin, first comment of the day. Hi, John. I'm on the toilet. Thanks, Kevin. The goat. I don't know if I've ever seen you here before, the goat. Maybe I have. But in either case, solidarity to all my guys, girls, and non-bis. Absolutely. So glad you're here today, the goat. Peanut Butter Beatrice, happy Independence Day, clown face emoji. Yeah, happy Indigenous Genocide Day to you. Happy Settler Colonialism Day. Let's all go blow up some fireworks and reestablish our aerial dominance over the public. Every single time I see one of these fireworks shows happen, I immediately just think to myself, what is this other than to, sure, pretty lights are nice, but what is it other than to just say to the citizens of the country, hey, look at what we are willing to waste money on, right? We could do this in your house if you like. That's what I always think when I see these fireworks shows. It's like, man, there's like a lingering threat behind this light show. Gabriel, good to see you. Dragon Fruit, always a pleasure. Many of my friends have no air conditioning during these heat waves. It's brutal. Yeah, I don't have air conditioning. I don't have any air conditioning. So if you're hearing a hiss in the background, that's what's going on. My poor little pug, he's laying right beside me, just panting away. He's doing really, really well. The Goat writes, you recommended yourself on a Reddit post I made a while ago. I tuned in and liked the show, so I subscribed. Hooray! The system works. I'm glad to see you, The Goat. I am trying to get into the habit of doing clips and spreading myself around a little bit better, because I know that I'm bad at that, and I know it's something that I've got to do better on, and people have been commenting on it recently, and so I did a clip. I did a clip recently, and it was very successful. I had a very successful clip that went up and did very well wherever I put it. So I'm going to continue doing that, even though I only have so much energy. I am just one man trying to make all of this stuff happen. So hopefully one day I'll make so much money that I'll hire staff. Sure. I'm sure that'll happen. Omnicidal Tendencies, good to see you. Laughs and Raytheon, yeah, exactly. XD writes, happy flag. Good to see you, XD, as always. So today is what I would describe as a slow news day. It feels like everybody is kind of in a state of shock from the past week, where we were collectively traumatized with the news that the president cannot be criminally prosecuted. As well as the overturning of any government oversight on any corporation has been completely overturned. So I think that we are experiencing collective trauma. Literally, the Heritage Foundation, the guys that are behind Project 2025, explicitly saying that this is a second American Revolution. One of their toads said on national television, or not national television, sorry, Steve Bannon's show, he said, this will be bloodless if the left allows it to be. So, really hearkening into the idea that there is going to be a civil war. The Goat writes, I am very happy to have found more lefty content from Canadians. Feels like everyone in the online sphere who makes content on Canada is rebel news adjacent. Yeah, there's a reason for that, The Goat. There's a reason for that. It's because that's where the funding is, right? Like, guys like me are working at Starbucks. That's what's happening, right? Your artists and your intellectuals and the people who are actually thoughtfully exploring the humanities are bankrupted by the system of capital, who don't want introspection or reflection or self-analysis or criticism. And so they absolutely destroy anybody, like financially destroy anybody who's trying to stand up and say, hey, maybe we should do better. Like, maybe we shouldn't be doing this. So a guy like me, to even be in the online space, requires an enormous amount of sacrifice, requires an enormous amount of like, I've got to carve out the time of my life. I've got to put it down. I got to do the research. I got to look at everything. I got to make this all happen. I'm a weirdo. I'm a strange man, and I know that's the case. And I'm just, because I'm driven to do this, I'm happier doing it than I am not doing it. But I know most people are not like that. And so who are the people who can do it? Who are the people who can take the time to be online? Well, they're the people who are funded by think tanks. They're the people who are funded by a billionaire class who is completely incentivized to ensure, let's round up the Jews. Like, that's the kind of shit that you're going to get from the right wing, right? That's the kind of thing that you're going to get. Like, and it's obviously having an impact on the society. I literally spent 2 hours today having a back and forth conversation with people on a subreddit, just informing them of what Canadian law actually is, right? Rebel media will, what they have started to do, and it's interesting that you bring up rebel media, but what rebel media has started to do is they will go up to Palestinian protesters. They have this big, gigantic truck that has screens on both sides of it, and the screens are essentially flashing anti-Palestinian content, and they'll drive the truck up to these Palestinian protests and flash this kind of stuff at them, and it's very, very clearly an incitement to violence, right? And so I just commented on this in this subreddit, Canada Sub is what it's called, and I just commented on this, and I said, this is an incitement to violence, and rebel media should be very careful. Like, they could actually end up in a very serious court case should violence break out when they do this kind of thing. And of course, this leads to a back and forth where it's very obvious that Canadians don't understand what Canadian law is. I'm like tons of people just being like, show me where the law is. And I'm just like, okay, here's the Canadian government. Here's the RCMP. What do you want? Like, what do you want? We live in Canada. Like, your whole free speech argument doesn't play. Or you can't walk into a theater and scream out at the top of your lungs over and over and over again, fire, 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 and cause a panic, and then be like, oh, I have the right to free speech. You'll go to jail, right? You can't hand out pamphlets saying we should round up the Jews. Like, you'll go to jail. Doesn't matter how loud you scream free speech. And if you pull up on a group of protesters who are protesting against a genocide that our government is funding, with big billboards telling them that we're right to commit a genocide against you, go back to your country, and violence breaks out, you've incited violence and you're going to go to jail. And so rebel media is really playing with fire, if you ask me. But the thing is that the people who fund rebel media don't give a fuck, because they know they're never going to be punished. They know they're not the ones that are going to be on the hook. It'll be the editorial board or the journalists or the people driving the truck, right? They'll just say, like, oh, we didn't authorize this. This is well beyond the mandate of what we stand for here at Rebel Media. And so they'll just throw a couple of their guys under the bus, right? Should that actually occur. But the reality is that the people who are funding these far-right lunatics are themselves far-right lunatics who are billionaires, right? Very straightforward. So that's the reason why you don't find leftist content. And I'll see leftists from Canada and leftists generally pop up here and there. They last a couple of months, right? They do good content, but it's a marathon. It's a marathon. And you got to be really committed to it. You've got to sacrifice a lot to do it. And accept that you're just going to kind of live in poverty, and you're just going to kind of experience sort of the shitty end of what it is to be living in Canada. And there's plenty of people who are like, man, I'd really love to get into journalism or in the blogosphere or any of that kind of stuff. Conrad Black wants to give me $100,000 to write a bunch of articles about how Justin Trudeau sucks. Okay. Like, it's really straightforward how this is going. So I thank you for your comment, because, like, that's what's happening in Canada. You will never see leftist content, except from people like me. And then when you do see quote-unquote leftist content, it's essentially just liberalism, which is essentially center-right at this point. Kevin writes, I'm going to let my peasant brain turn wild and go up to the hills and watch some fireworks tonight. Yeah, Kevin, knock yourself out, dude. I can't do it. I get too cerebral about it. It's the reason why I can't do roller coasters, right? My sister and I, like, my sister makes fun of me for it, because she'll be like, let's go on the roller coaster, and she wants to be like, woo, and like have a whole thing. And the entire time I'm on a roller coaster, every single time, I'm just like, well, here we go, we're up the hill, right? And then we're gonna go down. I have a distinct memory of the last time I was on a roller coaster. I was going through a tunnel, right? And there was a tunnel, and we were going, and I could see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I thought to myself, as we were heading towards the tunnel, I bet the minute we hit the light, there's going to be a big loop, and it'll be like, whoa, up and over, right? And sure enough, when we went on the light, there was a loop, but it also twisted. It was like a corkscrew twist. And I remember, as it was going through the corkscrew twist, thinking to myself, that's clever, well done. Not only was it a loop, it was also... So it's like a twist in a twist, which is really nice. So, so I'm like thinking my way through the roller coaster, and my sister's like, you got to stop that. Just like put your hands in the air and just be like, woo! You just got to kind of just suspend all of that. And I'm like, I just can't. I've spent too much time analyzing this stuff. I've spent too much time learning about what I like. Once you know how the sausage is made, you can't unknow how the sausage is made, and that's essentially how it works with fireworks for me. That's why my taste in movies is so eclectic and esoteric, right? I just can't be like, oh wow, Captain America threw his shield. Okay. Joe Anthony is saying, who said that, Bannon? No, it wasn't Bannon that said it. Here, hold on. Let's just pull up the article. I think this one's going to be a bit... this show is going to be a bit... Where was it? What you're looking at right here is the Discord. If you would like to be involved in the Discord, please... you know what? I can actually just pull up the meme. Because you know what? I think I actually have the meme. Do I have it? Yeah, there it is. Heritage Foundation President celebrates Supreme Court presidential immunity ruling. We are in the process of the Second American Revolution, which will remain bloodless if the left allows it to be. This is Kevin Roberts. This MediaMatters.org. Heritage Foundation President celebrates Supreme Court immunity decision. So, like, we're pretty cooked. I should say. Like, it's gonna get really fucky. It's gonna get really, really fucky. Woke CIA drone, how you doing, man? Yeah, you're right. Woke CIA drone pilot, man. Every single time you comment, I'm like, absolutely, dude, you're right. The problem is my bootstraps. Yeah, that's the problem. The problem is that I'm not working hard enough, right? That's why 60% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, right? That's why there's all this homelessness, is because we're all just not bootstrapping ourselves. You know, it turns out that the majority of people in the society are just lazy. Yeah, who knew it was so simple, right? Woke CIA drone pilot writes, Canadian law, you mean Trudeau's woke communist trans squads gulagging people for not calling men women? No. We here in Canada actually do have something called the rule of law. I know that in America, that doesn't really apply. There isn't really such a thing as the rule of law, and that's explicitly true for the president now. There's no such thing as the rule of law for the president. But in Canada, we actually do have a rule of law, right? Like one of the things, like as much as there is a lot of fear mongering in Canada, like we actually have a Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and I think the big dividing point between the legal system in Canada and the legal system in America is that in America, judges are elected. Okay? So all it takes is one moron who's like, I'd like to be a judge. Yuckles? Right? All it takes is just one asshole who wants to be a judge, spends a couple $1 million, runs a campaign, and now he's a judge. Never cracked a law book, doesn't know what precedent is, and he's literally just a guy being like, well, that sounds good to me, yuckles. And of course, he's gonna basically go along with whatever his corporate buddies tell him to go along with, because they're the people who funded his campaign, right? That's and that's literally how it is in America. That's literally the legal system in America. In Canada, not the case. Just not the case. To become a judge in Canada, you have to be a lawyer practicing law in the Canadian legal system for like 20 years. And then you have to go through a process of actually applying to be a judge and convince a series of other justices and judges that you are competent and capable to do this. You have to write gigantic dissertations on it. You have to put forward like a ton of different credentials. You have to prove you know what you're doing and what you're talking about. And then that gets you on a list. Okay? That's not even to become the judge. That's to get on a list. And then from that list, you get to become like an appellate judge in a lower court. And then from there, you can rank up steadily over time. And then once you've done all that and you've sat as a judge for a period of time, then you can end up on a list to be selected by the Prime Minister to become a Supreme Court Justice. So to become a judge or a Supreme Court Justice in Canada is a lifelong pursuit that has an enormous amount of credentialization connected to it. You can't just run a campaign and win a fucking election like you can in America. And then on top of it, once you are a judge, there is just this enormous amount of scrutiny that goes into every decision that you're making, and just an enormous amount of I'm trying not to use the word oversight, but just like it's really difficult to believe that a guy is going to spend 60 years of his life to become a Supreme Court justice just to be like, well, now I betray all the Canadians I possibly can, and he just snuck through like a Manchurian candidate. Like, I'm not saying it's impossible, but then to do that to such a degree that you have a majority of Supreme Court justices in Canada that have done that, it's just not likely. Right? Whereas in America, straight up, the president just picks whoever they like. And they don't even need to justify it. It's literally like, I'm picking my waitress. Yeah, my mistress can be the Supreme Court Justice. Well, what's their legal credentials? Who cares? They're going to say yes to everything I tell them to. That's what's happening. And that's essentially what has happened in America. That's why you've ended up with this lawless country that just is where the president doesn't need to abide by any rules. Right? That's what is actually happening. And so it's different here in Canada. We actually have a legal system. Now, you can criticize that legal system, but because we actually have a legal system, right, it changes the discourse considerably. It doesn't mean the rhetoric changes very much, right? And a lot of the decisions that get made are cultural, right? So if your leadership is a bunch of neoliberal Austerians and the entire culture is like, yeah, neoliberal austerity is what I want, well, there's very little that you can do about it. Yeah, the goat nails it. The key to wealth and success is going to Jordan Peterson events at your local hockey arena. Yeah, exactly. Jordan Peterson's a fraud. Highest level. Fiddleford, good to see you. Woke CIA drone pilot, rule of law, never heard of it. Doesn't sound like freedom, man. Man, having a system of accountability and precedent that goes back hundreds of years. That's not freedom, dude. That's not freedom. Omnicidal tendencies. Yeah, local and state judges are elected. Federal ones are appointed. Yeah, but who's appointing them, right? Like, and when they're appointed, they don't need to have any credentialization, right? You just pick whoever you like. This guy took a law degree from an online university, and I like what the cut of his jib. Yeah, but Eric, good to see you, Eric. But John, that's authoritarianism. Why having this whole process when you can buy out your judge? Exactly. Freedom. That's freedom. The freedom to buy a judge. Radio Halifax, good to see you, my man. Hey, I've watched all seasons of Law and Order. Make me a judge. Well, you would be more credentialed than other people. Seth Botstar, good to see you. To be fair, in America, they're trying to gain the freedom to make whatever laws they want. Yeah, I genuinely don't think that the libertarians in America really even know what it is they're asking for. I think that's what makes it pretty dangerous, right? Like, all they have really is a slogan, right? Freedom. That's it. Like, just make America great again, freedom, right? But they haven't actually thought through what that actually means. And that's why you end up with, like, a lot of sort of well-meaning people. And people who I think are well-meaning people and more or less good people supporting just some absolutely heinous bullshit because they don't actually know what it is they're talking about. They don't actually have a systemic critique of the society that they live in. They don't actually understand what it is they're talking about. And when you start to delve in, like, the number one reason I don't buy into libertarianism or take it very seriously is because I don't think it's good to follow an ideology that can be defeated by playing one board game one time. Like, if you play one game of Monopoly, you just finish the game and go, and that's why libertarian doesn't work, right? This is why libertarianism doesn't work. It's because if everybody is quote unquote free, right? Forget about the fact that some people have hundreds of billions of dollars and some people have nothing, right? Let's just assume everybody starts at an equal playing field. Well, what's the result? Oh, the result is that one person owns everything, so they're basically just a fucking king. Right, and which is what libertarians are actually arguing for, right? They're arguing for a return to a feudal monarchy, and that's the reason why the president is now considered above the law. That's the reason why corporations are no longer regulated in America, because libertarianism has taken hold, and it's an ideology that fundamentally says feudal monarchy was good and right, and we should return to it. They're going to call it capitalism, but it isn't. I mean, it is capitalism, but it's capitalism. It's like a fusion. In any case. Yeah, and who gets the freedom here? That's probably what's important. Yeah, no, but even that statement there, like freedom to do what? Freedom for what? Freedom for who? Right? Freedom to achieve what? These are just things that you don't discuss, right? And if you do discuss it, you end up with guys like Murray Rothbard, who are like, the freedom to enslave children. Like, this is something he literally argues. But you can go read Murray Rothbard's stuff. He's like a well-known libertarian, right? He's connected to like the Foundation for Economic Education and these sorts of think tanks, these libertarian think tanks, where you get guys like Prax Ben, just absolute hacks and losers who don't know anything about the subjects that they're talking about. Who spew like anti-communist rhetoric that literally came out of Goebbels. And Murray Rothbard is straight up just like, yeah, children should be enslaved. We should enslave children. That's a libertarian argument. That's a worldview that he holds. Yeah, freedom to get and spread COVID. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, freedom, basically, from my understanding, can be simplified as the ability to do a thing. Right. So the ability to go to Africa and round up a bunch of black people and bring them back home and put them on a plantation. Freedom. Right? Freedom. No, I think one of the worst things that has happened to the modern American discourse is libertarianism, for sure. Yeah, Midnight Rose. And Midnight Rose, you're nailing it. Good to see you, by the way. Meanwhile, liberals spend more time attacking and degenerating communists than fascists, outright saying they're complicit. Same with libertarians. Yeah. No. Like, look, here's a controversial statement. Okay, algorithm, AI, this is a controversial statement that I'm about to make, and I'm saying it somewhat tongue-in-cheek. Do not ban me for saying this. The fact that Joe Biden is not using this new authority that he has been granted, where he can basically do whatever he likes and face no criminal prosecution in order to actually fight for the things that he claims to fight for, is proof positive that he's not a serious person, right? Like, Joe Biden can literally take a handgun and shoot Donald Trump in the face, right? Like, right? He can legally do, well, not legally, but it's, the way it works is that he cannot be tried for illegal actions as long as they're considered official. So he could straight up, have Donald Trump assassinated. He could have the Heritage Foundation rounded up and thrown into a prison cell. Like, he could just do that. So how seriously is he taking his position if now that he has been granted these powers, while simultaneously screaming at the top of his lungs, this is a fascist threat, fascism is coming, oh my god, it's fascism, fascism. Well, now he has the legal authority to physically stop that fascism from taking hold. He can literally round these people up and then just go get some martinis, right? He can literally round up the entire Republican caucus and incarcerate them. He can literally go to the Heritage Foundation and round them up. He could straight up clear the Supreme Court and put whoever he wants on it today. All of the Supreme Court justices that just gave him the authority to do it, he could just be like, cap, and put in 6 people right now. He could do it. Why doesn't he? Because he's complicit. Because the Republicans are his allies. He works with them. He doesn't actually believe in anything. He believes in money exclusively because he's a death cultist, just like they are. And the only reason he's pointing at the Republicans and being like, that's the rise of fascism, man, is in the hopes that it'll scare enough people to vote for him. Because being the president at this point is just a vanity project. There's no actual, like, vision in America. There's no actual, like, desire to govern in America. None of that exists, right? There's, like, if you said to Fidel Castro, hey, Fidel Castro, no one's going to prosecute you for crimes anymore, I'd be like, okay, cool. Bye-bye, Batista. Right? Right? So where's Joe? Where's Sleepy Joe? He has the authority. He has the ability. He has the power. He can just do it. He doesn't even do it personally. He can just hire people and then give them presidential pardons. Like, there are so many avenues he has now to prevent the rise of fascism in his own country. He has 1 year to literally clear house. He could do it. He can do it. He has the power. He has the authority. He could absolutely do it. Why doesn't he do it? Because they're his friends and his buddies. Donald Trump is his ally. He's not interested in fighting his allies, right? He just wants to put on a good enough show to convince the gullible masses that, oh yeah, I'm actually an alternative, when I'm not. I'm obviously complicit in all of this. I'm part of it. But he wants to convince enough people so that they'll vote for him, and then he gets to be the president, and then he gets to sit in the big fancy chair and put on the big fancy suit in the big fancy office, right? This is the Oval Office. I'm a very important person. I'm part of history. And then whenever they put a piece of paper in front of him, he gets to sign it and then hold it up and be like, look, I'm the guy that has the signature on the important piece of paper. And that's all they want. Like, that's all Donald Trump wants. That's all Joe Biden wants. That's what all Democrats want. That's what all Republicans want. There isn't actually anybody in any of these organizations that are actually thinking to themselves, hold on, how do we govern for the benefit of the people? How do we actually govern for the benefit of the people? And they might say that they're interested in that, but that's just to con people into voting for them. The entire system is a system of deception and duplicitousness at this point. And Joe Biden is no different. And the fact that he's not using the authority that he now has in order to clear house of these fascists that he's supposedly scared of, shows you he's an ally. He's their ally. Just like liberals are allies to fascists, as we've been saying this entire time. Seth writes, oh, that's what your video is about. I saw it pop up in the recommended and never got around to watching it. You should watch all my content, SethBot. All my content. The video that I made, that clip, was a reading of an article from The Nation, which was entitled, The President of the United States Can Now Assassinate You Officially. I mean, America is not a free country anymore. Like, just straight up. It's just not a free country anymore. Midnight Rose says, vote for us so we can prevent the right from doing these things, even though we literally have the presidency right now and have had it for the last 4 years. We need another 4 years to not do it. Yeah. One of the worst things that I've heard any commentator say, and I keep hearing it, is that, Republicans are corrupt, but Democrats are spineless. Democrats aren't spineless. They just understand what their job is, right? To call Democrats spineless is to misunderstand their role, right? Like they're not doing these things because they have no spine. They're not doing them because they're not interested in doing them. They understand that their job is to just maintain the status quo until such time as the populace gets sick of them and then votes in a fascist. Like, that's what they're there for, right? And the status quo in America right now is fascism. Just ask the Gazans what they think of that. Joe writes, a very intelligent liberal who hosts a successful podcast was saying Biden is competent and did well at the debate, considering he had no notes. So, who's this very intelligent liberal? Is there such a thing as a very intelligent liberal? Like, just because they speak well doesn't mean they're smart, right? Like, this is what I've come to call the Sam Harris effect. Just as long as you talk with competency and competence, you can say the most racist possible shit and the stupidest, dumbest things that any human being has ever said out loud. But as long as you say it with confidence and calmly and calmly, well, then everybody will just be like, well, that's an interesting point that raving, foaming at the mouth psychopathic racist is saying. Like, that's what that's Matt Dillahunty. I forget who Matt Dillahunty is. That is ringing a bell. No. To try to make the case that Biden did a good, like, and honestly, like, I don't know why liberals are like, oh my God, he did so bad at the debate, when the guy's literally, like, committing a genocide, right? Leon Farada N, don't know if I've ever seen you here before, bud. Hope you're here to be beautiful, my man. Yeah, same as Ben Shapiro, yep. Rhetoric and being fluid has nothing to do with being smart, but it moves masses. I mean, two things that Ben Shapiro has said, there are three statements that Ben Shapiro has said that should disqualify him from being considered an intellectual at all. The biggest one is that he believes in a magic book, that he thinks that power and authority flows from the Old Testament, and that God is telling him what is right and wrong based on one book that exists. This should exclude him from being considered an intellectual at all. He has the freedom of religion, right? That's great. That's fine. But we have the freedom to criticize his religion, especially if he's going to bring it into the public space. And if you're going to stand in front of people and say, I think that the Bible or the Torah provides authority, and we should sacrifice human logic at the altar of the Bible, well, then you're not a person that we should take seriously, right? The second thing that he has said is, if when water comes up in climate change, people will just sell their houses and move, which, of course, the rational response is, sell them to who, Ben? Sell them to who? Who's going to buy this property that's just been wiped away from climate change? So that's another statement that just, like, shows you how stupid this guy is. And then the third thing that he has said in regards to climate change is, well, the heat will go up, people will just use air conditioning. So that's the third thing that should really just exclude him as a serious commenter. And the idea that Ben Shapiro is actually considered a serious person by anybody should be really, really concerning. Like, that really was one of the moments. Like, there's been several moments, but one of the big moments that convinced me that American society is going to face a serious and significant decline is that Ben Shapiro is taken seriously. Like, if he was like a kooky little cultist off on the corner somewhere, I'd be like, yeah, every society's going to have like kooky little cultists, right? But he's not. He's beyond that. He's become like the face of the right-wing movement, which really tells you how incompetent Americans have become, that they're listening to this guy and thinking that he has anything interesting or credible to say. Woke CIA drone pilot writes, if you ever want to see a very smart liberal say the most insane stuff, you've got to check out the I'm Really Important channel. He's literally the white guy from the video and has smart takes on how Biden is so great. Yeah, I'm sorry, man. If you're trying to defend Biden at this point, like, I think it's over for you. like, I just don't know how you can manage it. Like, this is what I would say about Biden's debate performance. I've said this before, I'll say it again. If Joe Biden was enacting policies that were of benefit to the proletariat, and if he was actually fighting climate change, and if he was actually putting forward a serious front, and he was actually enacting this Green New Deal, if he was actually doing all of that stuff, actually in actuality for real, and then he went in front of the nation and was like, I'm trying. Here we are. I would be saying out loud, yeah, he's an old guy who's in cognitive decline, very clearly. But look at his policies. Look at his record. Look at what he's doing. Right. I don't actually care about the fact that Joe Biden is in cognitive decline. Like, that's what makes this whole debate conversation so fucking so dumb. Right. That's what makes this whole thing so stupid. Like, what, you think you guys are not going to experience this? You think that you're not going to go into cognitive decline? You think that you are going to just face life and then just be like, well, I guess it's time for me to leave, and it's just going to be normal for you? You don't think your brain is not going to slow down? You don't think you're going to not lose your capacity to speak? You think that time is not going to turn you into a puddle of mush as well? Like, get the fuck out of here. We're watching. The only reason it's worth commenting on is this guy holds the power of the presidency. Okay? But, like, I almost guarantee you that in the pre-television, pre-radio era, there were presidents of the United States and probably presidents all over the place and leaders and emperors who were like this. Right? And nobody gave a fuck because people would give a shit about, like, what are they doing? What are their policies? Right? That the only reason we're actually babbling at all about this debate performance is because we can't talk about anything else. That if liberals actually talked about the policies or the ideas or the thoughts or the philosophies that were being put forward by these Democrats and Joe Biden, they would realize, yeah, I guess we're fascists. Right? We're committing a genocide. Yeah, we're continuing the climate change apocalypse. Yeah, we're just, rounding up kids and putting them in cages. Yeah, what a normal people we are, right? But you can't talk about that. And so the only way to maintain the narrative that we're better than Trump for some reason is to deal with the most superficial shit. But now they can't even do that, right? So it's just like a group of people who have only been dealing on the most superficial level of politics, which is just like performative image making. And now that image has been shattered in front of their eyes. And so what are they left with? And so you have one group of people who are like, Joe Biden actually did good, which is just cope of the highest possible order. And then you have another group of people that are like, okay, we should replace this guy, right? Because what we're doing is just about performative image crafting. It's not about policy. It's not about what they're actually doing or how they're actually governing. It's just about what they look like, right? So, and that's all Democrats care about. It's the only thing they care about. I just... so when I see these guys rising up to the defense of Biden, it's just sad. It's just sad and pathetic. Like, just the absolute last gasp of, like, desperation coming out from a person who wants to believe they're a good person when they're really just a pro-genocidal maniac, right? Like Destiny, like Vosh, like all these guys, right? Like they're just like, yeah, genocide is totally cool when it's my guy that does it. The Goat writes, Shapiro, content, good to see you, my man. The Goat writes, Shapiro and his owns college kid videos was essential in switching online perception of Republicans from a bunch of uneducated, God-fearing hicks to the facts and logic party. Yeah, which is itself so stupid. Like, oh yeah, Ben Shapiro, super good at talking to 18-year-olds with no education. Right? Like, the more you think about it, the more sad it is. Right? And then Ben Shapiro goes and talks to literally anybody else and gets totally clowned on. Like, anytime Shapiro talks to literally anyone of any educational level, he gets completely clowned on. Because he's just a creepy little fascist who thinks God told him what's right and wrong. Austin Wallace, good to see you. Joe, Peanut Butter Beatrice writes, I believe the non-technical term for this is sundowning. The technical term is dementia, but 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. everything will be fine, they say. So it's good. Yeah, it's all good. No, like, again, I just think that, like, Joe Biden, in terms of his image at this point, is the perfect figure to be the leader of America, right? Just a dementia-ridden old fossil with an old philosophy that is 1 foot in the grave. That's exactly America, to a T. Joe writes, they always tout low unemployment as a big accomplishment, never mention how these jobs pay poverty-level wages. Millions of people, some work, two of them and still struggling. Oh yeah, the unemployment numbers are totally cooked, dude. The unemployment numbers are completely cooked in America. If you work 1 hour a month, you're considered employed. And then on top of that, if you stop looking for work for like 2 months straight, they just take you off. They just don't include you in the numbers. So, like, the unemployment numbers are absolutely cooked. The idea that we should take that seriously, that the Democrats walking around are like, unemployment's never been lower because we made it look that way. It's just absolutely ridiculous. Leon writes, we used to talk years ago. Oh, okay. When Boric was elected in Chile, we were in constitutional process. Everything went wrong. Now Jose Cast, Milley's Chilean pal, is imminently Chile's new president. Yeah, dude. Well, we knew that neoliberalism wasn't going to give up, right? We knew that the neoliberal cult wasn't going to give up in Latin America, right? Content writes, sorry to interrupt the stream, but if you had $45 to burn, is the Elden Ring DLC worth it? Yes. Straight yes. Like, you're not interrupting the stream for that, dude. Like, that I will tell you straight up. Like, the Elden Ring DLC is like another game. Like, there would be, like, series that would call the Elden Ring DLC a sequel. So, if you liked Elden Ring, if you played Elden Ring, if you had a good time with Elden Ring, and you're sitting there with a little bit of, with enough money to buy the DLC, and you want that Dark Souls kind of Elden Ring style experience, the answer is yes. Like, you could spend that money on something way worse. Way worse. The Goat writes, you just mentioned the issue. When you think about it for more than a few seconds, most people don't. Yeah. No, most people don't, because most people are just operating from a place of total fear, right? They're just operating from a place of total fear, where they can't actually get into... They can't actually get into a position of rationalization, right? Most people are just operating reactionally. Like, the fact that Sheldon Cooper, right? Big Bang Theory, young Sheldon, right? The fact that this guy is considered, like, cute and adorable and sweet, when he's basically a sociopath. Like, and a misogynistic one at that. Oh, haha, he just doesn't know any better. Joe writes, yes, I don't know how they're able to put that aside. Fear of Trump has a lot to do with it, and this project 2025. Yeah, it's sort of ridiculous. Presidents have never needed to make important decisions after 4 p.m. Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Generation Y Me. Good to see you, by the way. Midnight Rose. It's crazy to me that Biden supporters are considering dropping him over the debate performance, and not because, you know, he's funding and protecting death in Gaza and doing everything Bibi wants. Yeah, But that tells you everything you need to know about the Democrats, right? And the Republicans, for that matter. But the whole system is just performative. It's what I've been saying this whole time, right? It's just performative. They don't care what he does, right? Well, they do care what he does. They support what he does. They care how he looks while he's doing it. That's all. It's just performative. Homicidal tendencies. I would rather vote Biden than Trump. They do a swap now. It's a GOP win. Trump is worse. Trump is only worse because of the perception, right? Like, once you understand, I'm just going to keep saying this. I'm just going to keep saying it. And I want this on my tombstone. If I leave one mark on this culture, if I leave one mark on this declining civilization, if after I'm gone, people look back at me and say, John was right, this was absolutely the case, it's absolutely true, it's still true, and everybody acknowledges this point of me, then I consider my entire life well lived. The Democrats and the Republicans are allies. They work together. The idea that you gotta vote for Biden or else Trump will get in is gaslighting. They are allies. They work together to achieve goals collectively for the system of capital. The game is, we are the Democrats. We are here to protect you from the evil Republicans. Oh, the evil Republicans. And we're going to actually do the things that you say. And then they get in power and do fucking nothing. Because that's their job. That's what they're there to do. They're the good cop. Right? And then eventually the populace goes, you guys are worthless. And then the Republicans come in and actually enact the policies. Right? They enact the policies that the death cult has always supported. So, if there wasn't this release valve, if there wasn't this good cop in the conversation, which is the Democrats, then the populace would get into revolutionary fervor a lot quicker, right? If it literally was only fascist king, and that's it, well, then the peasantry is going to be like, fuck this fascist king. Let's just organize revolutions and coups and, like, fuck this guy. We don't need to follow his laws. We don't need to follow his rules. And so the innovation that capitalism came up with is, let's have secondary kings. We'll have the evil fascist king, right? Which always has been the Republicans. Well, and it was flipped before, blah, blah, blah. But there was always one party that was that, right? And then let's have a second party. And the point of that second party is that when everybody goes, oh, this fascist king, oh, instead of having a revolution and overthrowing the system of capital and being done with these capitalists, they can get funneled into secondary king, right? They can get funneled into this secondary group. And the role that the secondary group has is stasis. Just everything stays as it is right now. Right? So the fascist king's edicts and everything that he has done to regress the society, right, is now put in stasis. That liberals exist to put the society in a place of stasis so that it stays exactly as it was. It doesn't develop. It certainly doesn't develop towards socialism or communism. It remains exactly where it was. Right? Which means that it steadily decays and steadily decays. Oh, they're so spineless. They're not doing anything. This isn't certainly a policy that they're following through on purpose. Right? And as it decays, people get tired of it. And they're just like, get rid of them. And then who comes in? The fascist king. Right? So it's always about, how do we get back to the fascist king? How do we get back to the fascist king? How do we get back to the fascist king? How can we invade Iraq? How can we destroy the countries? How can we do this? How can we steal as many resources? How can we enslave populations? How can we commit genocides against people? How do we get back to that? Because that's what America actually is. That's what it actually is. Right? And they know that if everybody finally comes to understand that America is a settler colonial state that uses extraordinary violence to commit genocides and theft and enslave populations, that huge sections of the population are going to go and overthrow that. And so they got to have a release valve. They got to have a place where people go, oh, not this, this. And who is it? The Democrats, liberals. So they're allies. They work together. And the reason why I feel like I have to hammer on this, and I'm going to continue hammering on it, I'm going to continue nailing on it, is because I have caught in myself, I have found myself forgetting that principle. When that is a central, core, foundational, fundamental principle. The Republicans and the Democrats are allies, that they work together and everything they project outwards is just performative. In the exact same way that like a WWE match is performative, right? That they aren't antagonistic to one another. They're only antagonistic to one another in front of the cameras. That's it. They're villains in the same way that that Homelander and whoever that guy who played Bones is in The Boys are villains, right? They're villains in the show, but they don't actually hate one another. They're just actors, right? So there's like a layer of reality that has been put in front of you that you have been deceived into believing is reality when it's fake. It's just fake at the highest possible level. It just doesn't exist, right? That these guys, when the cameras are off and they're all in their clubs together and they all go to Jeffrey Epstein's pedophile island, right? They all have a good time with one another. They know what they're there for. They understand what they're doing. And so we have to remember that this whole bad performance from Biden thing flows directly into this Biden v. Trump, as if there is such a thing as Biden v. Trump. Oh, we gotta vote for Biden because Trump is worse. They're allies. There's only one party. There's only one party, right? And if the quote-unquote solution to all of these problems that we're being given is consistently vote for the Democrats, then the Democrats can just begin the series of regression down to Project 2025, right? That the system of capital just wants to do Project 2025, right? They just want to do it. Well, if the only solution that we're offered to prevent Project 2025 from happening is vote Democrat, well, then the Democrats will just do it by piecemeal reformism. So how do you want it? Do you want it slowly, in a slow trickle over time, or do you just want to get it over with? That's the only option you actually have. Because there is no lesser of two evils. Because there isn't two evils. There's just one evil with two heads. And like the faster we get to this as a public, and the faster we hit this, and the faster we recognize, and the faster we realize, the Republicans and the Democrats and the liberals and the conservatives and the NDP are allies. They work together. There's a single entity that they are all part of. The faster we get there, the faster we can actually begin getting towards revolutionary energy in a serious way. But as long as you look at any of these parties and think to yourselves, oh, well, salvation lies with them, bye-bye. You're cooked. You're done. You're not actually seriously in the conversation. Put it on my tombstone. The conservatives and the liberals are allies. The Democrats and the Republicans are allies. They only project an image of antagonism because it maintains the system of capital. Remember it. Remember it. Never forget. Austin Wallace, good to see you. Hey, did you hear about the U.S. Supreme Court basically saying the president can do crimes with immunity? Yeah, we've been reporting on that since it happened. As long as it pertains to his constitutional abilities like commanding the military. Yeah, right. As long as he writes it on stationery. Midnight Rose says, also the purpose of Democrats is to prevent any movement to the left. Yeah, that exactly, right? Like, don't allow actual revolutionary energy to take hold. Republicans say, meet me in the middle. Democrats take a step forward. The Republicans take a step back, and the cycle repeats. Yep. Leon writes, Elden Ring is the best experience I've had with a video game, straight up. Yep. No, Elden Ring was very good. That if you just let a group of people make art, they'll make art. Austin Wallace writes, the descending option basically said the president can kill their political rival without getting charged with murder if he commands his military to do it. Yeah. Eggs D, controversial opinion. Elden Ring is good. Dark Souls 3 will always be the better game to me, though. Controversy. Total controversy. Well, with that controversial statement made, I'm going to take a little bit of a break here, guys. Go use the washroom. Give me one moment. Please stay tuned. Yeah, like one of the things I was just thinking of while I was using the washroom there. Like, the Obama administration proves my point completely. There was a moment when the Obama administration had majorities in the House, the Senate, and the presidency, and they passed fucking nothing. They literally passed, like, Obamacare, which was Romney Care, right? It was Mitt Romney's Medicare bill that Mitt Romney passed in his own state. And so the Obama administration took it and did that. Outside of that, nothing. Had the Senate, had the Congress, had the presidency, 2 years, did fuck all. And the entire time Obama was like, well, we got to reach across the aisle. We got to make sure that our Republican brother and sisters, right? They all couched it in this idea of unity building so that they could get away with doing fucking nothing. And the entire populace would go like, I guess doing nothing is the thing to do right now. That's what they meant when they said change. True Steel, I don't know if I've ever seen you here before. That is how fascism works, by places these binary choices on us, Dems versus Republican. Yeah, meanwhile, the Dems do nothing to address our issues. Yeah. No, the good cop and the bad cop, that's it. Like, if you want to get the fastest thing, the easiest thing to keep in your mind when you get into this Republican versus Democrat kind of thinking pattern is good cop, bad cop. As soon as you understand good cop, bad cop, you can just be like, okay, good cop, bad cop, right? That the only reason I'm being presented with this alternative view that says, is to lower my defenses so I will be suckered into going along with the policies of the bad cop. Joe Anthony says they compete for control. That's about it. It's worse than that, okay? It's worse than that. It's not about competing for control. That the people, because what I've described, the alliance between the Democrats and the Republicans is systemic. That's how the system works systemically. The people who are running for these positions do so out of a place of vanity exclusively, with no other rationale. They might say out loud, and maybe even they believe it of themselves, I'm going there to help people. I'm going to go there to improve the lives of people. I'm going in there to fight, to drain the swamp or any of this kind of stuff. But the reality is that they are running for Congress and for the Senate and for the presidency because they want to be a congressman and they want to be a senator and they want to be the president. And for no other reason. So that they can literally be like, I'm a senator. Look at me, I'm Senator so-and-so. Oh, wow, that looks good on the resume. Senator. And then when they're done being a senator, they go work for the fossil fuel industry, or they go work for Raytheon, or they go work for any of these corporations. So for a lot of these people, becoming a congressperson or a senator or even the president is just something to put on their resume so that they can get a better job later. They don't actually give a fuck about legislation or any of this kind of stuff. They don't care about any of that. right? They just want to be a congressperson. Like, Donald Trump initially runs for president because he wants to be the president, and for no other reason. Like, they want the prestige. They want they want the glory. They want to be, I'm in the history books, baby. That's all they want, right? So from the personal level, they're not competing for control, because the corporate power structure is what has control, right? That the military-industrial complex has way more control than the president. What they're competing for is just vanity. I beat him. I won. That's it. Like, it is that vapid. It is that tepid. It is that silly. It is that ridiculous. Like, it is that way. That is why the society is in the decline that it's in. Because there is literally no structural incentive at all for these people to produce positive results for the people they claim to govern. They run a beauty pageant. Whoever wins the beauty pageant gets to sit on the board of whatever. They do what they're told by their donors. And then when they get deposed, which happens to every politician, they go work for their donors. There is literally no incentive built into the structure for these people to produce any result other than, how do we exploit the proletariat for the benefit of the capitalist class? That's true if you're Democrat. That's true if you're Republican. And that's a structural issue. That's the structural problem with the system. That's why it's collapsing, and that's why it doesn't work. It's designed to be that way. From the personal level, it's just vapid careerism and straight up just, I want to be the president. That's it. Peanut Butter Beatrice, the Dems will hand it to Trump in the end. They get what they want without being the bad cop and playing the part of the toothless opposition. Yeah, and they'll get to write books like how we stood against fascism and my fight against fascism, as if they tried, right? As if they were serious, right? And they'll go on talk shows, like they'll go to Ellen, and Ellen will be like, Can you tell us, like, what was it like in the and they'll actually be like, well, you know, I was seriously pushing back, seriously, yeah, 100%. And Ellen will be like, wow, yeah, oh wow, wow. Like, it's just a fucking show. Yeah, Joe writes, they are a bulwark, they being the Democrats, they're a bulwark against revolution or even systemic reform. Exactly. Yeah, it just ends up, this is Midnight Rose, ends up operating as a ratchet effects. Democrats oppose progressive changes while co-opting some of it, and we just keep moving to the right. Only thing that matters to Dems is respectability. Yeah. As long as they look statesmanly, right? This is why everybody loses their minds about Iraq and nobody knows anything about Libya, right? Like, nobody knows shit all about Libya, when, in my view, what they did in Libya was way worse. Way worse than what they did in Iraq, right? Iraq was already, like, totally fucked over, right? The CIA had put in their guy, Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein was funded by the West in order to be a thug in Iraq in the first place. So the United States erected a petty little dictator in Iraq in order to divide the country along ethnic lines and maintain power and authority, to extract as much oil as he possibly could and give it to American corporations in the first place. That's Saddam Hussein. Like, that's his whole fucking career. And so when George Bush goes in to Iraq, he's really just going in to clear up the problem that America created in the first place. Sure, he murders 1 million people, and sure, it creates more disorder, but not more disorder than had already existed previously in Iraq, right? So it was always just this American shit show. It was always just this American shit show of total disaster and total devastation for decades in Iraq. Libya was run by a socialist named Muammar Gaddafi. who had a bloodless coup, overthrew a monarchy that was in place at the time, a colonial monarchy. I forget which colonial power. He built the most prosperous nation in Africa, with the strongest economy in Africa. He was beginning to build a pan African currency and a pan African alliance, building up Africa, building up Libya. And the Obama administration, along with Hillary Clinton, just fucking straight up murdered that guy in front of everybody. We literally have footage of it. And then Hillary Clinton cackled on national television. We came, we saw, he died. Like a fucking witch. And now Libya is beset by warlords. All these warlords are attempting to pay fealty to the American empire and try to find a way to gain power in Libya for themselves. And there's just open slave trade markets. Like, what Obama did in Libya was way worse than what Bush did in Iraq. But because Obama, we here in America, we believe in American values, and we believe in... Because he seems like more of a statesman, and he seems more intelligent than good old boy Bush. Yuckles. Everybody's just like, well, okay, whatever, pass. So, liberals and Democrats have only ever cared about what looks good. They only care about image. That's the only thing they care about. And this debate situation reveals that. They don't give a shit about the genocide. They don't care, right? In fact, their argument is, well, Trump supports the genocide too, so you might as well vote Biden. Because at least Biden isn't going to do Project 2025 immediately, but he'll do it through piecemeal reformism. Right? Midnight Rose writes, that's the point, though. Look at the social democracies of Europe. They aren't any better. Reform has clearly been shown not to work because the system will always prevent movement to the left. Yeah. Sethbot Star says, Donald Trump literally kept swapping between Democrat and Republican several times. Yeah, because he's just an opportunist. Yeah, woke CIA drone pilot. Exactly. Libya, another success story. USA. USA. Yeah, Peanut Butter Beatrice says, right, it's not who wins that matters. It's about steering us cattle in the direction they want and making sure we don't freak out on the way. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Joe writes, the smart liberals also say democracy is at stake in this election. It's stunning, as if everything was peachy until Trump, the evil dictator, came a long way. Yeah, I mean, I would make the argument that democracy has been dead in America for a long time. Like, you get to pick between a red or a blue. That's it. Just the red neoliberal fascist or the blue neoliberal fascist. They all kind of walk in lockstep with one another on all the policies that matter. It's just now they're going to formalize it, right? And in my view, the formalization of the end of democracy is going to happen along the vanity line, right? I want to be king. Like, I want to be the permanent ruler, right? Like, it's just petty. It's just the most petty shit you've ever seen in your life, right? Like, it is actually genuinely pathetic. If it wasn't for the strength of the American military and the terror force that it represents out in the world, it would be fucking hilarious. Like, if this shit was happening in, like, Estonia or something, we would all just be like, oh my god, what a banana state. Holy shit, it cannot get its act together. But it's happening in America. Like, so the decline of the empire is inevitable. And the inevitable outfall of all of this is that the empire falls apart. It just has to fall apart. It can't maintain itself. For those of you who are just listening at home, I am now showing a picture of the empire. Right? Like, this is the empire. This is what it looks like. This picture has done a really good job of presenting the walls around the empire and the battle lines that have been drawn in the empire, right? Significant places would be in Southeast Asia, right? South Korea and Japan. are part of the United States Empire. Australia, New Zealand are one of the United States Empire's positions. The Mexico-Texas border, of course. And then over in Europe, it's exactly the old Soviet line, right? With now you've got this like fight going on in Ukraine about whether or not this border is going to get pushed forward or not. And then, of course, their major outpost, Israel. And this empire can't sustain itself, and it won't sustain itself, right? That it will begin to fall apart, and it's just which section falls first, right? And once it starts to fall, it'll be like a cascading effect. It'll be like a domino effect. Just like how it was with the French Empire going down, just like how it was with the British Empire, the Roman Empire, the Ottoman Empire. Like, pick your empire. All empires fall this way, and there's no exceptions to it. There's no exceptions to it. We're not going to be able to uphold the integrity of this empire because it's not possible to uphold the integrity of an empire. Especially, like, one of the major contradictions that happens in empire, right, is that as crises begin to take hold at home, nationalism rises. Well, empires are, by their very definition, international. So you're going to have an international organization run by nationalists. Doesn't work. Just doesn't work. And that's what happened with the British Empire. That's the reason why they let go of so many of their colonies as the empire collapsed. Because the nationalists were like, fuck them. Get rid of these guys. We don't want anything to do with these guys. As the American empire begins to recede, places like South Korea, places like Japan are going to fall under China's influence, right? The influence of Southeast Asia. It's highly likely that the North and the South have a conflict. Australia and New Zealand are going to gravitate towards China because of their geographical connection, right? That it makes sense that Australia would begin to pivot towards China. Australia has enormous amounts of trade and economic benefits to being connected with China. Europe will likely just fall into an internal war because that's what Europe does, right? Like Europe is constantly falling into internal wars with itself. This post-World War II period is an anomaly, and the reason why it has been an anomaly is because the United States is such a power center and is such a huge influence in the world for that period of time. But as that influence begins to wane, and as the American country begins to decay inwardly and collapse inwardly, so too will Europe. And Europe will do what Europe has always done, which is have an internal war. Like, Europe has always done that. I don't know why we think Europe is not going to do that. That's how they've always rolled with one another, right? France, Spain, England, Italy. Like, if you look at the history of these countries from World War II backwards, it's been nothing but that. So the idea that they're not going to continue doing that once America leaves, which Donald Trump is basically calling for, right? Like, Donald Trump says that America should leave NATO. It's a very popular opinion. Joe writes, yeah, that did Hillary in once and for all. Her mask is dropped moment. I mean, it was so naked. That was the thing. It was just so naked. She's done lots of stuff. Like, Hillary is like a psychopath of the highest order. But that was like, she couldn't hide it anymore. Midnight Rose says, it's partially because we were also never taught about it. Yeah, much like Korea. Yeah, the Korean War. If we were actually taught the Korean War, people would be way less supportive of the government and patriotic towards it. Yeah. Instead, the way that they teach the Korean War is that the North attacked the South and America came to the defense of the South. That's the way it's taught. But when you actually look at the history, you're like, no. America armed the South and began incursions into the North. America very clearly started this war. Like, it's so obvious that that's the case. And the North was defending itself. Like, now you're sitting in a position where the leader, I always screw this up, Kim Il-sung, because it's Kim Jong-un, Kim. The current leader outright said very recently that the North should prepare for a day when it will occupy the South. And they literally destroyed they had a bunch of structures built in order to symbolically support the idea of reunification. Well, Natter. Good to see you, Natter. Hope you're doing well out there, my man. Current leader is Kim Jong-un. Thank you. Thank you, Natter. Yep, the founder was his grandfather, Kim Il-sung. That's right. There's Kim Il-sung, Kim... Oh. We here at the Canadian Commie believe in the highest level of professionalism. Oh. Just as we once raised the red banner over the Reichstag, so shall it be for the White House. Yeah, love to you too, Natter. Thank you. Well, and that comment was from Eggs Deep. Transylvanian, good to see you, my man. They also canceled elections that they promised to hold because the communists were going to win in a landslide. Instead, they instituted a military dictatorship that tortured people, put people in camps. Yeah. Midnight Rose, thank you. Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-il, and then Kim Jong-un. Yeah. Yeah, and Transylvanian continues. And then they started military provocations against the North. Yeah. There's a reason why the Korean War is called the Forgotten War. Because it's so obviously a major war of aggression against a defenseless power. Like, it was a war that was launched directly after World War II. And I actually... Like, one of the amazing things that the power structure gets away with is that it creates like little borders, right? World War II, like they create like a little border and they say, this is World War II. And you can become a master of World War II and you can know everything that happened within World War II and be completely illiterate of what happened directly after it. Because the only thing that you care about is this little ball, this little pocket that gets created. The Korean War is a continuation, absolutely, of World War II. That the Americans were bombing the shit out of Japan, right? China was having a revolutionary war while World War II was happening, right? The People's Republic of China gets formed in 1949. And so America just continues its campaign from Japan into Korea and then ultimately into Vietnam, where it attempts to create... what the Americans wanted to do is they wanted to extend their empire and take over all of Southeast Asia. That's what they wanted to do. They haven't been successful. They have some military bases set up on lily pads, but most of those military bases are just like refueling stations on like shitty little islands that nobody lives on, right? So they don't actually have like a serious and major position in Southeast Asia outside of South Korea and Japan. Transylvanian says, but the North was totally unprovoked, just like Russia now. Yeah. Generation Y me. Korea just wanted independence for once. No dependence on Japan, nor America, nor anyone else. And America was like, no, that hurts our feelings. Well, I actually think it's more serious than that, which is like, America saw what was happening in China and understood, and like the Soviet Union is there too, right? Like the Soviets just defeated the Nazis. And so the fear that's coming out of American capital is that communism is going to take over the world, right? That communism is going to take over everywhere in the world. So we have to get ahead of that to, quote unquote, staunch the spread of communism, right? That's why they continue this war. That's how you enter the McCarthy period. That's how you enter this kind of stuff, because everything is about staunching the spread of communism, because the biggest threat to the system of international capital is communism. And so they need to destroy Korea. They need to destroy Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, so that the Chinese can't get a hold of it. The way that China got a hold of Xinjiang, the way that China got a hold of Tibet, right? They don't want China to move into Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Myanmar. They don't want that. And so they go into those regions and start destroying it and create a proxy war between the Soviet Union and America, with China as kind of a co-belligerent between the two. And as that continues, the Nixon administration explicitly said that, like, we can't allow Russia and China to ally. That's against our interests. So we got to find a way to get China to be our ally. And they managed it. They created a peace deal with China that kind of created a balancing act between the two of them, so that they could form an alliance against, well, and not necessarily against, but just so that China and Russia would not be allies, right? That's the Sino-Soviet split with Khrushchev, right? And the more I learn about Khrushchev, the stupider I think Khrushchev is, actually. And I think that Khrushchev was a deeply, deeply cowardly man, and maybe even a bit xenophobic, because the way forward for the Soviet Union and for China is to create a unified front against American capital, and to try to succeed and try to find victory in Southeast Asia, where this proxy war is going down. And I think Mao, and then probably Deng, would have been on board with that. But with the death of Joseph Stalin in 1953, Khrushchev ascends to power, denounces Stalin, begins a project of capitalist appeasement, which leads to the Sino-Soviet split, and China is essentially isolated, right? And so it's forced into a position where it has to make a deal with America, because it's losing its ally, because Russia is also attempting to buddy up to European capital. So it's this, and that's essentially the state of where the American empire is today, right? That after World War II, and then after World War II, there's this like flurry of war that happens in Southeast Asia in order to staunch the spread of communism. A series of deals get made. American capital is allowed to exploit China and exploit Russia, right? So they defeat this. They actually win. Like the American Empire wins the Cold War. They win. It's a funny thing to call the Cold War because it was very hot, but that's fine. And then since then, what American capital has essentially been doing is extracting as much wealth as they possibly can out of China, out of Russia, out of Africa, out of Latin America. And any place that they can't successfully extract from, they actively seek to destroy, so that Russia and China can't actually get in there and develop it. That's the story of the Middle East. That the reason why America acts the way it does in the Middle East is because they understand, well, if we can't control it, if we can't have it, if we can't exploit it, if we can't get the resources, then let's just destroy it so nobody can. And that's the American philosophy in regards to the Middle East. And incidentally, is the American philosophy generally. That America will come to the point where it's like, well, if we can't have it, then neither can you. And they'll just destroy it. Nader writes, Khrushchev was an appeaser for sure. I came across a great book, Socialism Betrayed, Behind the Collapse of the Soviet Union. It tears him a new one. Yeah, I think that Khrushchev was essentially an opportunist. I think it really shows you that, to me, the big flaw of the Soviet Union, and you can see this even with Stalin, the conflict between Stalin and Trotsky, is that their institution was weak. They didn't build a strong, powerful institution, right? That China's National People's Congress, the National People's Congress of China, is an incredibly robust, incredibly powerful, incredibly strong, resilient organization. It has withstood a lot of trial. It has withstood a lot, and has stood strong, and is still quite capable. It is shown to be very resilient to external pressure, so capitalists attempting to infect it. But more importantly, and I think that this is the absolute tip top of its strength, it has shown that it has shown itself to be a structure where internal dispute is possible, but once those disputes are resolved, the party moves forward in unity. That to me is the true strength of the National People's Congress of China, and it's very impressive. It's very, very, very impressive. They have this entire institutionalized educational system of governance where they insist that it has to be democratic, so people are elected to the National People's Congress. But once they're elected to the National People's Congress, there's this whole process of training governors. They don't just let somebody be the president because they want a beauty pageant. There's actually like a training process. And I feel like the conflict that happened between Stalin and Trotsky, and then ultimately with Stalin and Khrushchev, just wouldn't have happened, or it wouldn't have unfolded that way in China. That they would have had the conflict and they would have had the debate, and then people would have gone one way or the other, and then there would have been this idea of, okay, good, we decided. Now let's move forward in unity. And they would. So that to me is what's impressive. What's so impressive about the National People's Congress. And I'm saying this in criticism of the Soviet Union, but it should be noted, like, the Soviet Union was the first swing, right? Like, it was the first try. The idea that the first country that ever tried to move forward on communist principles would get it right the first time. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Like, let's be realistic here. Like, that's like saying the very first rocket they shot into space should have landed a man on the moon. Like, no. Like, come on. All right, when are we going to get real with this shit? Midnight Rose writes, I think it's really telling that similarly we're also taught almost nothing of the anti-apartheid struggle of South Africa and how it happened, or the history of China before and during the PRC. Look, to me, and I'll talk about this, I love talking about this subject. It's one of my favorite subjects to talk about. I think that the worst thing that we have ever done in terms of our education about China is exclude the subject of war. That when we talk about things like the Cultural Revolution or the Great Leap Forward, or even the let 100 flowers flourish moment that happened in China, it's all disconnected from war. That we don't talk about the Vietnam War, we don't talk about the Korean War as it relates to the Great Leap Forward, and that to me is. It really shows that what the system of capital always tries to do is it tries to isolate these things. It tries to give you an isolated view, right? Which is what I think today's modern media does. Like the reason you guys tune in to hear, outside of the fact that I'm gorgeous and you all love me, but the real reason, right, that people tune in is because I create a larger view. I'm creating a larger narrative, right? That our modern media doesn't do. Our modern media wants you to take a look at a snapshot. That's all they want. They want you to go, and they want to go, oh, that's what they were doing in Israel and Palestine for the longest time. For the longest time, the Israeli-Palestine conflict was presented to us as like, look at this snapshot where both sides are bad. Look, two sides are fighting and they're both bad. And everybody went, well, two sides fighting. Fighting is bad. Well, it's a complex, difficult issue, right? And we were never presented with the larger picture or the larger narrative, because the power structure understands that if you were to show the actual picture of what actually happened in Palestine, everybody would instantly understand, oh, this is colonization. That's what this is. This is just colonization. This is the Israelis coming in. This is the Zionists coming in with the backing of the United States and the British, and colonizing the Palestinians and committing an ethnic genocide, just like the genocide of the First Nations people in America. It's the exact same story, right? And it's obvious once you take that larger view. So the American media and the Western media does everything it can to ensure you never get that larger view. And they've done a fairly good job of it in regards to China, right? Like, whenever the Great Leap Forward is discussed, it's just completely decontextualized from the realities of the Korean and the Vietnam War. Like really think about this. Like, it's insane what happens in this region at this time. That in 1949, the People's Republic of China is formed. 1950, literally 1 year later, the Korean War is happening on China's border. End the Vietnam War, the Americans start putting troops into Vietnam and start ramping up the Vietnam War during this period of time to, quote-unquote, staunch the spread of communism. Dwight D. Eisenhower literally threatens to drop a nuclear bomb on Fujian. That's Japan. They dropped 2 nuclear bombs on Japan 4 years earlier. Literally 1 presidential term, they had dropped nuclear bombs on Japan. And now here's the President of the United States threatening to drop a nuclear bomb on China while they invade Korea and while they invade Vietnam. And so the Chinese are freaking out. The Chinese are freaking out. And so the communists look at one another and say, we've got to do the Great Leap Forward. We got to get as many resources into a military effort as fast as fucking possible. We don't have an Air Force. We don't have a Navy. We don't have the capability to fight back against an imperial power that can literally send aircraft carriers over to drop nukes on Japan. We have to defend ourselves. And that's what the Great Leap Forward is all about. Did it create domestic strife? Sure. It was also successful. The Chinese successfully defended themselves against America because of the Great Leap Forward. It was a military success. But the Americans don't want you to know that. Because, first of all, it reveals to everyone with a brain in their head that America is a psychopathic death cult that's just literally carpet bombing the shit out of places. And it also shows that the Chinese policy was successful and it worked. So, decontextualizing events that happen in the world from war, I think it's just criminal. I think it's just evil. Like, the second anybody starts talking to you about the Great Leap Forward without reference to the Vietnam War, that's an unserious person with unserious opinions. Yeah, Andrew over on Twitch writes, Japan is completely under U.S. control. It's a satellite like so many other countries. Yeah. Well, and the system of capital is absolutely killing the people of Japan. Like, suicide rates in Japan are so high. It's essentially just turned itself into a country that develops and creates electronics for America, like Nintendo, like the Nintendo Entertainment System and all this. Like, it's essentially become like one big toy manufacturing country, right? And everybody in Japan is killing themselves over it. It's crazy. Yep, Seth, the whole thing with the Demon Core, yeah. They were going to drop a 3rd bomb until Japan surrendered. This is from XD. Japanese government released 3 new cases of sexual assaults from U.S. troops. Yeah, I mean, what else is new? That's a lot like the school shooting story that happens you hear these school shooting stories that happens in America, and it's just like, okay, another one, right? I just can't get emotionally attached to it, right? Like I just don't have the. I don't want to know these people's names. I don't want to know the case. I don't want to know anything, because it's like, yeah, another one. Okay. There'll be another one tomorrow, and there'll be another one the day after that, and there'll be another one the day after that. Like these are rote. These are routine now. This is just what American society looks like. And the solution that the Americans are putting forward is like, let's arm teachers. Let's create let's create safe boxes for people to lock themselves in. I've literally seen built into the wall of a classroom, you can pull out part of the wall and it creates a metal wall, so it creates a little safe box section in the classroom that kids can hide in if a school shooting happens. Like, this is a serious thing that's happening throughout the United States. Normal country, completely normal. Yeah, we're gonna build infrastructure into our schools in case of school shootings. Normal country. But like, from a commentary standpoint, it's like, yep, there's another one. Right? Maybe we should have a serious conversation about why that's happening. The thing that I find amazing about school shootings, the thing that I find to be incredible about school shootings throughout the United States, is that they're not happening at City Hall. That's what's incredible to me. Like, how is it that these kids and the people who are shooting up schools don't go to City Hall? Like, why are they going after like teachers and school kids? Like, why don't they? Like, if their problem is with these institutions, well, who's controlling these institutions, right? Government officials. Right? That's what I find to be completely amazing. I would think that if that started to happen in a more serious way, the ruling class would probably be like, maybe we should do something about this. Maybe we should more seriously talk about this. Yeah. Nader writes, how school shootings are changing the design of American classrooms, as if that's a perfectly normal development for society. Of course. Yeah, of course. I'm going to take this moment to just say like, share, and subscribe, guys. Make sure you've hit the bells. Make sure you've hit the whistles. Hit the notifications, all that kind of stuff. Please consider donating to the Patreon, patreon.com/thecanadiancommie. If you are a Patreon, thank you so much for your donation. Consider upping your donation even $1. Even $1 helps, guys. I appreciate it so much. I appreciate you guys being here. More importantly than any of that, let someone else know I exist. Introduce me to somebody else. If you know somebody else who is struggling with American propaganda, or is asking themselves, how come I can't find good leftist voices? Who should I find? Where should I be? Hello, hi, hello. Please recommend me. And thanks, guys. Thanks so much for being here. Japan is demanding the Kuril Islands from Russia, but has no international rights to do so. Yeah, who cares? Japan doesn't have a standing army. The strip of gray south of Japan on the map. Yeah. Japan wants to get back to its imperialist roots. That's what it wants to do. So, this one's from the Maple. Public safety saw no evidence linking Palestine rallies to Hamas call. From the outset, there was an attempt to conflate these protests with support for Hamas. This is a Canadian story. The federal ministry in charge of public safety knew that early pro-Palestine rallies held across Canada in response to Israel's attack on Gaza last October showed no signs of mobilizing to violence at the behest of an unconnected call to action put out by a former Hamas commander. But a minister in the Trudeau government and other politicians continued to falsely portray the protests as advocating for violence in Canada, in response to the Hamas-linked call to action anyway. a narrative that would help set the tone for smears against pro-Palestinian demonstrations for the next 8 months, and preceding a ramping up of policing efforts against activists in some cities. Internal communications obtained by the Maple through an access to information request show that in mid-October, Public Safety Canada focused on pro-Palestine rallies, with less attention paid to those held in support of Israel's brutal war on Gaza. The ministry was also told by law enforcement that some pro-Palestinian events had already gone ahead peacefully and without any incidents. None of these facts were reflected in the ministry's public statements, which came at a time when some prominent pro-Israel voices had called for other pro-Palestinian rallies to be preemptively banned over alleged safety concerns. In a joint statement co-signed by PSC before rallies on October 13 took place, public safety ministers across the country falsely suggested that the upcoming demonstrations amounted to supporting terrorism or advocating for violence in Canada. The statement added, "Our law enforcement and security partners remain vigilant in the face of these potential disruptions and are monitoring the situation closely to ensure the safety of all Canadian citizens." On its website, the federal ministry framed the quote as a response to calls for a global protest and unrest from the terrorist organization Hamas. The statement made no distinction between the Hamas-linked call and independently organized peaceful protests in Canada. The following day, Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc cited a Hamas-led call for mobilization around the world and suggested protests in Canada, which included Jewish organizers and activists, posed a direct danger to Jewish people. The minister said he was in regular contact with senior leadership of the RCMP to remain apprised of their efforts to keep the Jewish communities and their institutions safe. LeBlanc's statement also did not distinguish between the Hamas-linked call and independently organized protests. At that time, deputy ministers and assistants at PSC were keeping an eye out for any signs of trouble on Canadian streets in coordination with the RCMP and CSIS, Canada's spy agency. Despite the rhetoric used in official statements, the ministry reported no evidence connecting the rallies to any Hamas-linked call to action. On the same day as LeBlanc published his statement, Senior Assistant Deputy Minister Patrick Boucher of PCS's International and Cybersecurity Branch reported to the Deputy Minister and other assistants that there are no indications of domestic mobilizations to violence, same as in the USA, relating to the Hamas call for protest. Boucher listed 3 protests due to be held in Windsor, Ontario, Hamilton, Ontario, and Montreal. Boucher's assessment matched that of several Canadian police forces, which told news outlets at the time that there were no signs of any specific threats to communities in cities across Canada. Boucher warned the Deputy Minister and assistants that the threat could manifest itself from both the IMVE, ideologically motivated violent extremism, and RMVE, religiously motivated violent extremism milieu, but did not identify any specific group or individual that might engage in such actions or connect such actions to the pro-Palestine protests in Canada. CSIS similarly told the Canadian press in May that violent rhetoric from extremist actors could impact certain individuals intent to mobilize to violence. However, the Wire's service account of the spy agency's warning was short on specifics. Attacks against both Muslims and Jewish people have been reported since October 7th, with increases in both types of incidents reported by Toronto's police chief in November. PSC was aware of the time of the October protests held in solidarity with Palestinians in the face of Israel's war on Gaza, that other events in Canada had already gone ahead peacefully. 3 days before the Public Safety Minister's joint statement was published, Boucher reported to the Deputy Minister and assistants that the RCMP has confirmed with me that outside of these noted events, nothing concerning domestically at this point, before summarizing developments in Israel and Gaza, and listing pro-Israel and pro-Palestine rallies that were planned in cities across Canada. It is not clear from the email whether the noted events referred to any action in Canada, events in Israel, or both. Regarding 3 pro-Palestine rallies that had already taken place, Boucher noted that there were no incidents reported. The ministry was also assessing the threat level against Israeli interests in Canada in a partially censored section of the report, No specific threats were identified in the sections of the report that were released by the ministry. I'm not going to continue with this because it's such a long article, and I think you guys get the point. There is a narrative that exists in the zeitgeist that says Palestinian protesters are Hamas, that they are the same. Well, your leadership, including CSIS and the RCMP, disagree. That the people who are protesting the genocide of Gaza are doing so because, guess what, guys? Genocide is bad. Did you guys know? Did you guys know that committing a genocide and funding a genocide and aiding and abetting a genocide is bad? So it's good that we have reporting happening that actually shows very clearly that there is no link. There's no link whatsoever between the people who are protesting and Hamas. So the people who are screaming at the top of their lungs, these protesters are terrorists and we need to round them up and deport them, and it's just basic fascism. And we should call it for what it is and say it to their faces. Like, you have no evidence, you're just being a weird, creepy little fascist. In other news, the U of T protesters clear encampment. The U of T encampment was one of the last encampments to stand here in Canada, and it has been cleared. The organizers, of course, say, we are evolving. They say the students will carry out targeted outreach to alumni, and this fall every new student will hear their call to action. Make no mistake, we are not leaving this fight. We are evolving. Our campaign continues stronger, she said. We have built relations at this encampment with people across social movements. These are the relations that will help us achieve our demands. Our achievements are undeniable. We forced U of T to come to the table and negotiate around Palestine for the first time in its history. Rashik said the students said the encampment has been the longest held in the school's history and one of the largest around the world. By mid-afternoon Wednesday, demonstrators had packed up most of the tents, leaving bare patches on the grass of King's College Circle on the front campus. On the grass in the middle of the encampment, a message was visible in large painted letters. We will return. Considering what the story was coming out of places like Alberta, or what you saw in California, this is actually a really positive outcome. Seth Botstar asks, hey, so I've been curious as to why you use Windows and Chrome rather than something like Linux. Literacy. That's all. If you don't mind me asking a potentially annoying question, like, I think it's kind of tech socialism. Just literacy, dude. It really is that simple. Like, the fact that I am doing this right now in front of you, right here, is, in my view, a miracle in and of itself. So, like, I philosophically, I understand your position, and philosophically, I even tend to agree with your position. Boy, it would be great. It'd be super great if I knew how to use Linux, and I knew how to code, and I knew how to do a bunch of stuff, right? That'd be super wonderful and super great. Not likely to happen. Not likely to happen. And it's for exactly the reason you think. Right? It's for exactly the reason you think. Fiddleford writes, the advocacy for violence is a funny way to recognize deployment that might face resistance. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, but honestly, Seth, like, it's beyond taking time to learn it. Like, when I was a kid, I was huge. Like, I've always loved video games, right? Immediately when I was a little kid, it was the second I sat down and took a look at what coding was and how to get involved in it and to do it, I just immediately was like, nope, that's not real. That's not a serious thing that I'm going to be doing, right? So it's not about learning it, right? It's not about learning it. It's about having the capability to learn it. right? Like it's just not going to happen, right? It's just not what my brain. And anytime I have sat down, I have distinct memories of literally sitting down and really trying, and after like 2 days of really trying, I really drew the conclusion that, like, if I have to do this, I'm just gonna shoot myself. Like, I'm just gonna shoot myself. So, right, different strokes for different folks. And like, I don't know, like, I just haven't seen a reason why, like, what's the win here for me? Like, where's the W? Right? So I'm going to go through like months long of overhaul of how I know how to do stuff so that I can use something else other than what I'm currently using to achieve the exact same result. It just doesn't look like a W for me. It looks like a major loss for me. Yeah, I'm like, I get what you guys are saying. Like, I'm hearing you. I just think that, like, you guys are further down the path than I am. Right? Like, you guys are more literate. You understand more about the subject than I do. You're doing this, like, weighing kind of thing. I'm literally sitting here going, when I turn it on, does it turn on? And when I click on things to go to places, does it do that? I'm happy. I'm happy. Like, I'm a very simple man. I don't need all of these bells and whistles. Fiddleford writes, I don't use Linux for my recreational computer. That is insane. Yeah, like, the privacy concerns with Windows and backdoor is a real concern. Linux with paid for security suite ensures maximum privacy. Like, I just don't know how much I care. You know what I mean? Like, if anybody's going to come after me, they're just going to come after me. They don't need a big backdoor thing. Like, they just don't. like I don't know what is it that you think I'm securing? Yeah, I just don't think I'm going to take a whole lot of time to do that. I barely have enough time to do this, and while simultaneously keeping my sanity, right? Like, really, if I was to lay it out as cleanly as I possibly could for you guys, for me to begin the process that you guys are actually discussing in a serious way would mean taking psychological damage. It would be psychic damage for me during a period of time where I don't want to take that. I'm not interested in that. So, no. Thank you for your concerns, but no thank you. In local news, here in the city of Toronto, Toronto condo sales plummet 28% in June as sales crash across all property types. Get fucked. Get fucked. Get fucked, condo sales. I hope they crash 200%. I hope that they just plummet down to the earth. The Bank of Canada's first interest rate cut in 4 years has done little to boost Toronto's real estate market as sales continue to drop, with condos showing a whopping 28% decrease in June compared to the same time last year. Many buyers are waiting for more rate cuts before jumping into the market, lessening demand, but new listings were up 12% year over year, keeping the market well supplied, according to the June report from the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board, released Wednesday. The Bank of Canada's rate cut last month provided some initial relief for homeowners and home buyers, the president, Jennifer Pierce, said in a statement. However, the June sales results suggest that most home buyers will require multiple rate cuts before they move off the sidelines. Yeah, you dumbasses. The prices are so fucking high, you're pricing everybody out. right? So this is very clearly a sign of capitalism eating its own tail, right? You've got huge corporations as well as like mid-level buyers buying up multiple properties and then just sitting on them because they don't need to live in them and they're not renting them, right? They're just sitting on them. And they jack the prices out of the moon. So people are like, yeah, I'm not going to buy. And they're just going to keep not buying. Nilo, good to see you. I don't know why you guys are trying to convince me to use like a different it's just not gonna happen. Like, I don't know why that's what the chat has become. Here's an article from way back in the day. This is from 2022. Might even be later than that, but whatever. Yeah, 2022. Remember Pete Buttigieg? Or Pete Buttigieg? Buttigieg? Hungry babies, regrettably, are just the price of the free market. Pete Buttigieg says that in a capitalist economy, the government doesn't and shouldn't make baby formula. But around the world, even in the United States, the public sector has stepped in to correct market failures. Someone save us from the free market ideologues before it's too late. Sitting down on CBS's Face the Nation this week, Transportation Secretary and billionaire darling Pete Buttigieg addressed the infant formula shortage that sent parents around the United States scrambling to find some way to feed their babies. Asked about the sluggish federal response to a crisis regulators were informed about as far back as October, Buttigieg absolved the Biden administration through a little bit of neoliberal sleight of hand. Let's be very clear, he said. This is a capitalist country. The government does not make baby formula, nor should it. Companies make formula. It was the company that screwed up, Buttigieg insisted, and now it was the government's job to get the contaminated plant that helped lead to this shortage back up and running quickly and safely. At its heart, this is just a lazy bit of political ass covering. In reality, the Biden administration has a great deal of responsibility for what happened. Federal regulators took months to respond to the October whistleblower complaint about food safety issues at the Abbott Laboratories plant in question, only for 2 babies to die and another to be hospitalized a couple months later. Nor did regulators act on Minnesota health officials' September warnings about a baby hospitalized after taking formula from the same plant. In fact, the Food and Drug Administration did a routine inspection of the plant that very month and concluded its issues weren't major. It was only in January that FDA inspectors actually went to the plant in response to the complaint, and since Abbott shuttered the plant a month later and recalled its products, making the shortage worse, the administration hasn't exactly acted with urgency. It failed to proactively deal with the problem, with the president claiming last week that he and others would have to be mind readers to have acted earlier on the crisis that was being reported on as early as January. So, you know what's so great about this story? I'm just going to interrupt as I'm reading it, is that corporations, because of the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Chevron v. the United States government, it doesn't need to abide by what the federal drug... Corporations don't give a fuck what the FDA says anymore. So these problems that we're reading about, that was happening in 2022, they're just going to get worse. Baby formula is just going to get more poisoned, right? They're just going to get worse. Like, that's the best part. And, like, the idea that these guys, yeah, in a line that no doubt prompted much high-fiving and backslapping from his comms team, Buttigieg passes the buck by suggesting there are simply some lines too sacred to be crossed even in a crisis. In this case, the government directly producing baby formula. It's not just that in a capitalist system, according to Buttigieg, the government does not make baby formula. It's that it should not. But governments around the world, and even in the United States, are today, and have been in the past, engaged in production in a vast array of different industries, sometimes competing with the private sector, in other cases as monopoly producers. Even in capitalist societies, there's been a widely held principle that certain things are so critical to the functioning of life and the economy that they shouldn't be left to the whims of unaccountable private actors looking to get rich at any cost. Oh my God, dude. It's just like, it's so funny to see how even 2 years ago, right? Like, this article comes out in 2022. Do I know the month? It'd be great if it was like exactly, yeah, there it is. 05. March, April. So May 2022. So about little over 2 years ago, this article comes out. And you listen to the tone of the article. You listen to them talking about, like, there's government oversight, right? There's the idea of government oversight. There's the idea that, yeah, the government should be involved in things and all this kind of stuff. Literally 2 years later, the Supreme Court is overturning the foundational ruling that allows organizations like the FDA, the Federal Drug Administration, to have authority in its relationship between itself and corporations. And with the overturning of that legislation, corporations can basically ignore the FDA. That it doesn't abolish the FDA. The FDA still exists. But corporations don't need to pay any attention to what they say. That the FDA is essentially, they can give recommendations now. And corporations will go, thank you for your recommendations, while continuing to put lead in whatever they want, or borax, or whatever kind of shit they want to do. And that we're all just going to, they're all just going to be, it's just wild to see how short a timeline it actually was between, hey, the FDA exists and now it doesn't. And how swift and sudden it happened. And I think it's just because nobody believed it could. Like, even I'm kind of in awe, actually. Like, I try to look down the pipe and see events as they are going to be unfolding, and so that we can kind of brace for impact, right? How we can kind of brace for impact. But, like, this story, this idea that corporations can just do what they like now, and the only oversight that they actually have now is federal judges or state judges. Joe Anthony writes, private companies cannot regulate themselves. How about we remove the whole incentive to dodge regulations? Problem solved. But oh no, that might actually work. Yeah, can't have strong public services. Yep. No, because the government shouldn't do anything, right? The only thing that the government should do is tax citizens to kill Palestinian children, right? That's the only thing the government should do. Okay, guys. I'm going to call this one early, too. I've done that twice in a row now. So I'm going to try extra hard to go longer next time, but it's just the heat is just murdering me. Always remember, each and every one of you is a quantum being walking around in quantum energy. These billionaires are spending hundreds of billions of dollars in the hopes you'll never realize it. You'll just stay the good little commodity they need you to be. Rebel. Revolt. Repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.